Of survivors have been flocking into Pemba port in Mozambique following unrest in the town of Palma. Over 8,000 people were displaced and dozens others killed last week when jihadists attacked the town on the northeast coast. More than 50 South Africans who went missing after the attack have now been accounted for. So to talk to us more about the unfolding crisis in Mozambique, we're joined now by Piers Pigou, Senior Consultant for Southern Africa at the International Crisis Group. Piers, thanks a lot for joining us this evening. Mozambican government has confirmed the death of dozens of people, including foreign nationals. The SADC Troika will be meeting next week to discuss the unrest. Is it a little too late?
Well, you know, for a long time, people have been warning that some serious attacks are going to take place in Cabo Delgado. There's been a kind of a lull in attacks during the wet season, and this was very much predicted. The regional body SADC has been trying to engage with Maputo for almost a year now. And has made very little headway. So there's some urgency behind the call for a meeting next week. It's a little disturbing that they're unable to lock down a date, which suggests that Maputo is still resisting having this meeting.
Well, the unrest, as you're mentioning, has been going on for a long while. In fact, in some places since 2017, where effects of alshabab were actually felt. But the question is, were the effects of alshabab actually underestimated by neighboring countries, including Mozambique itself?
Well, you know, the insurgency really did escalate during the course of the last 15 months. You know, just in terms of IDPs, internally displaced people, we've seen over 500,000, an increase of over 500,000 in the last 12 months. The number of attacks have escalated rapidly. We've seen a significant number of those claims coming from Islamic State, although the nature of that relationship, of course, is still undetermined. Over 800 attacks, about 46 have been claimed by the Islamic State, including this last one in Palma. I think regional analysts have been clear for some time that there is a huge problem. If you look at the nature of the attacks back in October 2017, when it started, it was groups of a few people with machetes attacking. Now you've got groups of hundreds of people making multi-pronged attacks using a range of assault weaponry. So certainly, relatively, we've seen increased sophistication, increased capacity, and now the takeover of two major towns. So there's a serious security problem that the Mozambican government and its security forces are struggling to cope with and to acknowledge to the region in terms of the exact nature of the threat that they're facing.
Do we have an exact figure as yet of exactly how many people have been killed?
Well, you know, in the latest attacks, the government have admitted to dozens. I mean, I've seen reports which claim that hundreds of people have been attacked, have been killed. We simply do not know. Like much of the unfolding situation over the last 10 days or so in Palma, a lot of it is unclear. You know, I listened to your report just now. You talked about 8,000 IDPs. We're talking about tens of thousands that are unaccounted for at the moment. So, you know, 8,000 may be what have been recorded in terms of coming into Pemba and various other cities. But there are, for example, 20 to 25,000 people from Palma holed up in a place called Kitondo near the Afungi Peninsula. And yesterday there were real concerns that insurgents were operating in that area and that those people were very vulnerable. There are thousands of people still unaccounted for, and I think there's a huge humanitarian problem. The World Food Programme suspended operations during the course of late yesterday and early today because of the security situation, because people simply don't know what's going on. And while people may not like the idea of white mercenaries or mercenaries from South Africa operating there, they have provided some measure of air cover. Yesterday was their last day of combat, and frankly, there's some questions about whether the Mozambican military and its air force are able to fill the vacuum that has now been created by their drawdown.
And this brings me to my next question, Piers. Does the Mozambican government actually want help?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. What the Mozambican government want is training and equipment. What they don't want is eyes on the ground. They don't want boots on the ground, and they don't want people to be actively involved and engaged in the theatre. The big question, though, is whether training and new equipment is going to resolve anything. And in the short term and to medium term, most security analysts are saying it won't make the slightest bit of difference.
And the African Union, we often have accused it or criticized the African Union about the lack of teeth it does to intervene, particularly in other states where, for example, where conflict resolution now becomes the order of the day. Does the AU have any teeth in this case to actually intervene?
Well, the African Union has expressed its concern and has called on the regional body, in terms of the politics of subsidiarity, to take action. And SADC has been trying since May to get some course of action, a strategic roadmap out of Maputo to give us a sense of what it wants beyond simply a shopping list of equipment and training. And so, the forthcoming meeting that is promised for later this week will be very interesting. The last time that the SADC Troika for Organ Politics, the Organ for Politics, Defence and Security, had a meeting in November. President Nyusi, who is chairman of SADC, didn't turn up. He sent his defence minister. So it'll be very interesting to see whether he turns up. It'll be very interesting to see who actually attends that meeting and what comes out of it. Quite frankly, most of us who are watching this are not holding our breath.
Piers, before we let you go, what is the end goal? What is the objective of al-Shabaab when it comes to the way that they've ransacked the certain villages and really caused havoc and wreaked havoc in the northern parts of Mozambique? To what end?
Well, of course, this is one of the burning questions. The narrative from the leadership of the local insurgency has been extremely unclear. We've only had snippets of information from that leadership. The most coherent narrative has come from the Islamic State media jihad channels, Amaq, Al-Naba, and so forth. And they reel out the same old anti-Crusader narrative of dealing with the state, removing the state and replacing it with a caliphate with Sharia law. Certainly what's been clear over the last 3 years is that the primary targets of attack have been members of the state and members of the ruling party. So that kind of authority and its infrastructure and the security establishment and that infrastructure have been the primary targets. But what we saw in Palma this time was a range of indiscriminate killings that we haven't seen on that scale since the beginning of this insurgency.
Piers Pigou, we'll leave it there for this evening. Thanks a lot for joining us as a senior consultant for Southern Africa at the International Crisis Group. Well, still